previous play will go under review.
Citizens of Earth, happy Tuesday evening. Thank you so much for being here on this week's episode of Under Review. If you are a first-time watcher or listener, thank you so much for finding us. If you're returning to the chat or listening to us again, thank you for returning. My name is Joe DeRosa, and you can find me on Twitter/X at @show_DeRosa. Tonight's tagline is ibuprofen for two reasons. Number one, I hurt my back at the gym the other day, and they prescribed me ibuprofen. I am in much better shape than I was 2 days ago, where I was in the ambulance, so thankfully nothing too severe. And two, today is a painful day for a lot of people because a lot of players that you speculated could make the roster unfortunately did not, and there are some surprises to boot as well. We will get into all of that and more, but first, allow me to introduce my guest. You may recognize his face. He has been on this show before, friend of the network and now writer for A to Z Sports, Mr. John Helmkamp, my former draft attendee along with Tom DeLoss and his brother Ian. How are you doing tonight, my good friend?
I'm good, man. I was super excited to get your message and be able to chop it up. It's obviously a big day. There's a lot to digest. I'm still digesting. There's a lot. There's a lot of names, a lot of moves, a lot of roster construction questions to kind of get into, but excited to be here. Excited to chat with you. Excited to see your face. I don't think I haven't been on with you since the draft. So it's been 4 months. So happy to get back and talk Bills. A lot has happened since we were in person last, and let's get into it. We're almost there. Regular season's right around the corner.
Just a couple weeks away. I'm incredibly excited, and this is a day that a lot of Bills fans have been looking forward to for a long time, just because, again, just shoring up some answers. You get to training camp and you get excited, and then those few weeks pass where you're like, damn, I just need to see the finished product now. I'm tired of speculating. I'm tired of all this. We can put that, I guess, mostly aside, because there's still, I want to preface our episode tonight by saying it's still taking shape in some way. I don't think we're seeing the final roster yet, but certainly the most concrete we've had so far, and very close to what will be the accurate portrayal of the roster when week one comes around. But yeah, we've had some surprises. We've had some, I guess, if you want to call them in both good and bad ways, things that definitely have taken the fan base by storm. So tonight, John and I are going to go position by position on this roster and just see if we're any notable things that we wanted to call out and go deeper into. But before we do that, folks, just want to ask you all again, if you are visiting us, have seen this show before, to drop a like. It helps our network out. It helps me out. It helps everybody out, including the global economy. No, it doesn't. I'm just kidding. Let's get into this. So we're going to start out at quarterback, and there actually is a little bit of surprise here for me, not for who is here, because Josh Allen is Josh Allen, but I was under the impression that Trubisky's injury might have been severe enough to warrant an IR with designation to return an IR spot. He did not. He ends up staying on this roster, and he is their choose for the backup quarterback role, meaning that I would expect them to not ship out capital for a backup quarterback at this point, but rather take someone off waivers for the practice squad. So, John, just your initial thoughts on that, or anything you want to call out from this position in general.
Yeah, I mean, quarterback's pretty straightforward. We all knew it was going to be Trubisky, even though he looked really shaky, and I thought Ben DiNucci looked like he might have kind of pushed him a little bit throughout those preseason games. I don't think this was ever really in doubt. Trubisky's the pretty much basically an incumbent backup, even though he's just coming back to the team. But it's the familiarity in the building and all that. I think this is pretty straightforward. I do hear what you're saying, though. I think the injury and not having to do an IR designation is important for him. I think there was a couple injuries where it was slated as week to week, and maybe they were going to be in jeopardy at the beginning of the season. And a lot of those injuries seem to not have been as significant as maybe we were led to kind of believe that they were.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that Trubisky seems healthy enough that he's, going to be ready to go. I agree with you. I think we're going to see someone land on the practice squad at quarterback just in case. Well, one, we need someone on practice squad anyways. But definitely to fill that out in case Trubisky isn't quite there, maybe for week 1 or something along those lines, you might see someone else get called up to be the backup to Josh Allen active in the first week or two. We'll just kind of have to see how the hamstring shakes out for Trubisky, but no real surprise here.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some options out there. Again, you already had DiNucci and Anthony Brown as options that came in about a week ago, but there's other players. Like I saw PJ Walker got cut, and he's definitely someone that could be interesting to bring on with the Panthers connection to Joe Brady. But yeah, I just assumed Trubisky would be out longer. And I guess it's just kind of reminding us all that even though these guys were week to week and they were very banged up, we also did have just under a month until regular season started from these spots of injury. And I think that when that list came out of all the player names that were on there, it got a very naturally negative reaction, but we had a lot of buffer before the start of the season for a lot of these guys to get right. So to see that, a few of the names that we saw not being on the injured reserve designated to return or out for the year, now being on the list as just legitimate depth on the chart, it makes me feel a little bit better. And also seeing Trubisky must mean that either the injury isn't as severe, or like you alluded to, the idea is not using an IR spot to have him eventually return, but rather maybe he's not 100% yet, but we think he can get there. So let's get someone on the practice squad that we can elevate, because again, it's backup quarterback. I know people have mixed opinions on it. For me, I don't put terrible amounts of stock into it. It's nice to have an option behind Josh Allen that you could feel more comfortable with. Mitch Trubisky made no one feel comfortable this preseason, but I still think he's a backup, someone that you can put in, someone that can at least be a living, breathing soul, which at that point is all I really care about if Josh Allen goes down, because I'll probably lose all hope for existence if that happened anyway. Knock on wood. Forgive me. Now, moving on to running back. There is a little bit of surprise here too, because they go James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. I'm reading off Sal Capaccio's chart and Uber Hansen's chart. I have both of them pulled up side by side, just comparing. But Darrington Evans, IR designated to return. And that one is interesting to me too, because I had said in a previous episode, 3 backs, someone goes to the practice squad, call them up if you need them. Otherwise, it's 3. They add in this designated to return for making a 4th running back spot. Will he actually inherit it? I don't know, but it feels like they have some confidence and I guess a duration for Darrington Evans to be able to keep him around. So any thoughts on that or anything about the running back room that caught your eye?
I mean, I'd be remiss for not mentioning the, preseason darling, love of all of our hearts, Frank Gore Jr., who was terrific. He looked great in the preseason action that we saw, getting over 100 rushing yards in the last game because he was literally the only running back dressed and ready to go. I thought that he looked terrific, but I don't really think that these spots were very much in jeopardy. Ray Davis has been the RB2 all along, showed up early in camp, looked great, earned that role really, really fast. I thought there was a little bit of a competition between Ty Johnson and Frank Gore Jr. I thought that Gore having the youth and the upside, that maybe it would have made a little bit more sense to try to kind of roster him and develop him a little bit more and see what you get there. I guess the idea is hopefully you're able to get him on the practice squad and he's available there, but I don't know if he's going to clear waivers. I mean, the way that he looked in the preseason, there's teams out there that are hurting for a number 3 running back. He might get scooped up by someone else. So we'll wait and see what happens there. I agree with you. The Darrington Evans IR eligible to return situation is really interesting, but throughout the preseason, I think you can make a case that Darrington Evans looked like the probably second best running back on the roster for a good chunk of it. He looked really explosive. He looked elusive. We know that he's capable as a pass catcher as well. So that's an important factor that he brings to it. But yeah, I'm curious to see, are they going to roster 4 on game day plus the fullback when Evans is healthy? Or is there going to be some moving around that happens there when Evans is healthy enough to come back? I'm not sure if they're going to want to carry 4 on game day. So I think there's still some questions there in terms of how that shakes out.
I think they'd carry 4 on game day if they think Evans could actually be a viable return option. Let's say the person they just brought in, Brandon Codrington, doesn't pan out, doesn't end up on the roster. Let's say it's by some sweet, and we'll get to Daquan Hardy. Don't worry. We're saving that for the end because we know everyone wants to talk about it. But let's say, Codrington doesn't work out. Maybe Hardy does come back practice squad. He ends up getting elevated and it doesn't work out. And now you need a return man that you could trust. And maybe you don't want it to be Johnson. Evans does give you that. So I can understand Ford dressed if it's for that reason. I just didn't expect them to turn to him. I mean, I thought that in camp, I didn't really hear too much about him. Not saying it was anything bad, just it was kind of quiet on that front. But yeah, he had a good preseason as far as some of his play, just as a back beyond it. And I was like, sure, if you want to get him for the practice squad, but I didn't think that it was likely. Again, I had said 3, but it's clear that they valued him more than I did, and he's an option to return off the IR. So power to him. I mean, listen, he was here last year too. He came back. He's in the preseason doing pretty well. I can't be mad at it if they feel he's a viable option, again, for returning. And I want to just answer this from DF Forever. Do you guys think we run more because of the better depth at running back? I mean, I already thought that the team was going to pivot to running a bit more just because of Joe Brady and what he wanted to do and kind of some of the trends you were seeing last year as far as decision-making with their running. How much more? I don't know. I still think it's Josh Allen and you're going to throw more than you run, but maybe a nice uptick to get it to like a 60-40 ratio with viable options to make it go. I mean, do you agree with this, John? Do you feel differently? What's your take on that?
I think the run game is going to be one of the strengths of this team this year. I think that we know what James Cook is and that he's a very explosive playmaker, but I think having a very talented, very stoutly built second option in Ray Davis, who you and I love, and when they made that pick, we were standing down there by the stage when that pick happened, and I remember turning to you and just going, "Oh, I love that."
Yeah,
like I love that sign, or love that draft pick. Ray Davis is a bowling ball physically, but he has the elusiveness and the explosiveness to be able to make people miss in short areas, be able to run someone over if he needs to, has decent long speed, not elite, but he'll be able to get chunk plays, which we saw throughout the preseason and through just training camp and practices. So I think that they're going to have a good, healthy stable of running backs that are going to give them options to run quite a bit. And I think with this team not having the clear-cut alpha anymore that they're going to force feed targets to, we're going to see them really spreading it around, having opportunities where maybe you go run heavy for a series and then get the defense to bite on that. And then you're into play action. And then you're into, your quick designated touches where you're getting the ball out to Curtis Samuel on a screen and Khalil Shakir and whatever. I think it's just going to be a very balanced, spread it around attack that includes a lot of the running game or getting those running backs the ball in space on some swing passes and stuff like that too.
Completely agree. And it's something that's been said on this show. I remember when I had Ann on a couple of weeks ago, and, it's a point he's made about just like you don't need to be the most formidable running team to be good at play action, but it definitely helps. And I think that reigns true still, even with, that there isn't really any major change. I think they're going to be a great running team this year. And I think you saw Joe Brady, especially in the second half when he was taking over and closer games were happening more frequently, mainly just because of the competition increase, especially when you get to the playoffs with the difficulty of the competition. He's willing to run as much as he needs to run if it's affecting, if it's working. And in that Dallas game, there's an example of it, but that Kansas City game where they were running down their throat until Kansas City finally adjusted. I guess the idea was like, keep Pat Mahomes off the field and we can move it on them. We will. They have the stable of running backs to do that, but I think even more so this year with, like you alluded to, Ray Davis, because Ray Davis, I think, is going to be the perfect complementary back to James Cook. I think he's got the hands to be able to catch out of the backfield. He has the blocking ability to be serviceable there, especially, you're talking about blitzes and needing him to pick someone up. And then, of course, him as an actual runner, he's a very viable option. So just to answer that question and put a bow on it, do they run more? I think it's going to be more of the same of how Joe Brady was calling it, just from a tendency perspective. What the runs will actually look like, we'll see, but they're going to run the ball. It's going to be a part of what they do. And ultimately, if it gets to, shorter downs and distances for Josh Allen, you can't be mad at that. So it's the running back room. And one final thought, John, too, because we talked about Frank Gore Jr. I kind of saw it coming that he was going to end up getting cut.
Yeah.
It sucks, only just for the sake of, I think he can be a running back in this league that does well. I hope he gets a shot somewhere. I would love to get him on the practice squad. I don't know if he clears waivers. I know Greg has said before, there's a lot of running backs out there. It's very possible that he just gets lost in the mix, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it either, because again, like all the carries he's getting are in the second half of preseason games. It's something where he was never really getting a real run, and I kind of didn't expect him to just for that reason. But if he ends up on the PS, I'll be happy about it. I will not complain one bit. I think he could definitely do well, especially with the type of runner he is and how willing he is to fight through contact. Like, there's something there at Frank Gore Jr., and if it's not the Bills, it'll be somewhere else, and I'm rooting for him. So, moving on. I mean, we could go to wide receiver because I count Reggie Gilliam. Again, I'm reading Sal's list and he has him as fullback. Reggie Gilliam, there's no real shock there. But wide receiver, they ended up going for 5 and not 6. I had predicted 6, and my final prediction for that was that they would choose one of KJ Hamler or Tyrell Shavers. And the Bills decided, hey, let's make him look stupid and actually cut both of them and just go with 5. So thank you for that, Brandon Bean. I appreciate you. But yes, John, 5 wide receivers: Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Matt Collins, MVS. Now, I'm going to ask you first your thoughts on the room, but also, do you think, because I had said earlier, I don't think this is the finished product, that they target or go for another receiver, maybe that have gotten put on waivers or got cut from a different team?
I do think so. And like all of Twitter today, as soon as I saw Noah Brown get cut, I was like, ooh, yeah, yes, please that. Give me someone with that kind of size and after the catch ability and the physicality that he brings and stuff like that. I think that it'd be a very intriguing option. We're going to get to the defensive side of the ball and some surprises there and stuff like that. But I do think that there's potential for you to see them add a wide receiver and maybe take away a defender. I think that there's still opportunity for there to be 6. Much like you said, I also had a prediction article go out, I think 2 days ago, and I had Tyrell Shavers in there as the 6th wide receiver. So thank you, Buffalo, for making me look dumb and saying we're just going to keep 5. It's interesting. This room is a really fascinating one. I like it. I have kind of cautious optimism when it comes to the wide receiver room. I like what they can do. I like the versatility. I like the ability after the catch in particular. And I'm one of the biggest Khalil Shakir truthers on the face of the planet. I've been pounding the table all offseason saying he's primed for a breakout. I think he gets 1,000-yard season under his belt. I think that he is going to blow up in a huge way this year. That's my prediction. But after the top 3, you're counting on Matt Collins as the 4, MVS as the 5. And I know those guys the wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5 on the roster don't do a lot in terms of production unless there's an injury, but it's just not a really inspiring group. There's not a lot of inspiring depth there. I thought MVS, quite frankly, had a bad preseason process. I think the reports that were coming out of training camp, what we saw from him in game action, it wasn't good. There were a ton of drops. There were nagging injury issues. I thought Tyrell Shavers passed him up in a big way. But then as I kept reading the tea leaves of everything that was being said and all the quotes coming out of the coaches and stuff like that, I'm like, they're going to keep MVS. Like, no matter if I think they should or not, they're going to keep him. They like the veteran presence. They like what he can do, what he's proven in the league already. And without having a lot of that on the roster right now, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman are going to be 2-year starters, and neither one of them have a ton of experience. I think they like having that veteran in the room that Josh Allen likes, just as a kind of glue guy a little bit, even though he's not going to be expected to be a massive contributor.
Yep, definitely. I didn't think they were going to cut MVS. I said he'd be a surprise for me. He was one that I could see, like, if you were asking me who would a surprise cut be, it'd be him. I thought the guaranteed money was like a lock for him, even though they've cut guys that have had guarantees before. But really, it was more of just like, you brought him in because he's the only one who's got the skill set he has. Like, who actually can be like your capable deep threat with size and also have blocking ability? Like, unfortunately, there's no one right now. And I don't think MVS is the last time you're going to see that, obviously, on this team. But for this year, that's your option. And I think you needed it. And I think even if camp wasn't the greatest thing, which it didn't end up being, so you need the body. And if the body's just a decoy, the body's just a decoy. That's okay. I think at that point, there's still value in that, especially for what you're able to do pre to post. Because, hey, listen, you could single him up. You could forget about him. If he gets open deep down the field, you better believe Josh is still taking that shot. So I'm totally fine with that.
Whether or not he catches it is a different topic. But yeah,
yes,
I agree with you.
Of course.
But listen, there is something to be said for, a cardio X, a decoy X, someone out there that they have to run with. You have to respect the deep speed. And if you don't, then Josh Allen is going to be able to throw it, over their mountains, and hopefully MVS comes down with it. But there is something to be said about having that stretch speed on the outside to open things up for Kincaid underneath, for all these other wide receivers, for everybody to work underneath so that defenses can't just collapse the box. Yeah, I get it. I get why he's there, but it still makes me kind of go,
Yeah. Cardio X is so good. That's funny. The metaphorical X, the X we found along the way. But like, yeah,
Correct.
listen, and do I think that this is the best wide receiver room they've ever had? No. But I also think, and I've said this before, evaluating this like wide receiver room to me in a vacuum, sure, we can make all these arguments, but it's not designed to be the strength of the offense on its own. It's designed to work in tandem with all the other pass catching groups they have, tight end and running back, where I feel it's so fluid this year that you're really just going to be calling it pass catchers. Cause I think Kincaid leads in targets. I think James Cook is going to be top 5 in targets. I predicted him to go top 3. I know, hot take. Everyone can say it's a hot take, but I still think he's going to get used a lot out of the backfield. And then you're looking at some of the other guys they have there. And to me, it's like, yeah, it's not the strongest room they've had. You would want to still have Stephon Diggs if you had Coleman and Samuel in the room and Shakir. Then all of a sudden people look at it as a top 5 room, but it's not in its own, but I still think it's going to be serviceable. And they decided to go with 5 people. And I can get it from a target share standpoint too, because that ball is going to be spread around. So it's fine. And real fast, I just want to say for Pops Mafia, who said Noah Brown will be gone before the Bills waiver spot. Noah Brown is a vested veteran. He can sign with any team. That is per Greg Thompson. I did not have that original thought because I asked that same question, but I did know he was a veteran. And I did, if I remembered correctly earlier, remembered that I think he did sign and Greg confirmed it. So shout out to him. Yes. I think the wide receiver room, 5 people, it's not shocking. I just had 6, but I think it'll be a serviceable room. I am curious if they make another move. And for me, I would love Noah Brown. I would love a trade for Mechie if they somehow pulled that off, or if they wanted to go for Terrace Marshall Jr., they could do that too to round out the room. But if they just stuck at 5, they just stuck at 5. So I'll leave that. But moving on to tight end, again, Gilliam, count him as a tight end, fullback, whatever. So round out the room. But Kincaid, Knox, and Morris, this was one of those things where I thought Morris might end up being put on the IR and designated to return. His injury, I guess, was not severe enough for said thing. So he is able to come back and he takes tight end 3, which I thought they do. And if he was hurt, I thought that maybe they would put Davidson in that spot, but he's healthy. Do you think anything of this room is a shock, or is this kind of per the course?
It's kind of part of the course. Zach Davidson was interesting, right? The athleticism, the stuff that he was able to do. Yeah, but it never really felt like he was pushing him all that much for that 3rd tight end spot. And Quentin Morris looked good. He made some good catches throughout the preseason games with kind of whoever was in at quarterback. He was still finding himself to be a consistent target in the passing attack, even when our quarterbacks weren't pushing the ball down the field. So I think that this is pretty much to be expected. I think Zach Davison is a practice squad guy that they're going to look to potentially bring back and have him available in case of an injury to then call him up to be the 3rd. So we'll see what happens, but not too much to talk about here. I want people, you were talking about the vested veterans and stuff like that. If you have 4 accrued seasons in the NFL, that's what classifies you as being a vested veteran. So everyone that was released today, if they had those 4 accrued seasons in the NFL, they are free agents. If they did not, then they go to waivers. So they're 2 separate processes for how we could potentially round out some of the depth spots on this roster right now.
Basically the length of high school or college, unless you were really, really bad at math and needed a little more time. But yes, it's a room I expected it to be. Nothing really shocking there. I think Kincaid leads the team in targets. I think he's going to be the focal point. If you had to choose like someone to call your wide receiver 1 or target number 1, Dalton Kincaid, your guy. I'm very excited for Dawson Knox with, I guess, not less expectation, but like less pressure on him. I really think Dawson Knox in more of a situational role beyond being a blocker is going to be very good for him. I still have a lot of faith in him. Health has really been the only reason I feel like he hasn't been able to contribute. When he's healthy, he's there for Josh. I don't think that changes. Just stay on the field. And then Quentin Morris, tight end 3, perfectly comfortable with that. I'm glad the injury wasn't more severe. So good on that front. But this was one that had a couple of surprises. I will start off by saying that I had 10, and my 10 were including La'el Collins and Richard Garage. So they actually, if my count is right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, I had to do that. Thank you. They had 9 here. They did not include either of those guys. It is Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, David Edwards, Ryan Vandermark, Alec Anderson, SVPG, and Tylen Grable, the shocker for me. I did not think Grable was going to make it only because I relied a little too much on Garage being here for a season and Grable being an athletic project, someone that I thought maybe they let go, maybe he clears waivers, practice squad. You give Garage the shot because he's been here. But I think Grable with his elite athletic traits and the showing he's had in preseason, which has been very, very good, just earned their trust quickly. They probably felt he didn't have a chance to get through waivers. Also, maybe felt that Garage, since he did last year, could do it again and be a practice squad option. So they went with 9. They chose Grable. That means 8 out of their 10 picks made the roster. What do you think about this, John?
I'm actually very proud of myself because this is the exact 9 that I predicted. So props to me. Pat myself on the back. Don't break my own arm. But Tylen Grable, I completely agree with you. It's interesting because we've already talked about a couple positions where they went with proven veteran, someone that they know, having that consistency around, and then all of a sudden you decide to go with Tylen Grable, a 6th-round draft pick, toolsy, athletic project offensive lineman, and keep them on the 53. And it's like, whoa, that seems like a little bit of a divergence from some of the other choices that were made. But I think one of the biggest things is that they trust Cromer. They trust him to develop offensive linemen. And I think that that was one of the reasons why they decided to go this route. I think the biggest cut here, obviously, is La'el Collins. I think the mobility was really lacking. I think you saw a lot throughout training camp and the preseason games that his days as a tackle are pretty much over.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the versatility to fill in at center. So if you're going to be rostering a, aging veteran offensive lineman that really is limited to pretty much just playing guard, that wasn't going to make a whole lot of sense in my eyes. Now, if they kept 10, he would have been the 10th guy that I would have kept at offensive line. But I had them going 9 because of some of the other positions on the roster. And I think that the other guys that you have here, especially that project as being backups on the interior offensive line, pretty much all of them, I think you could kick into center and give them a try there and see how it would work out. Whereas I didn't see that with La'el Collins. So I think that flexibility of some of the other guys might have been what kind of set it apart, as well as just the health. I don't know how healthy La'el Collins really is coming back from that leg injury. Maybe it's nagging him a little bit more than he's kind of let on. He's slowed down a step. I don't know. Yeah. But they decided to go youth. They decided to go upside. I like what you said. 6 of their 8 picks are signed to the 53-man roster, which is a really cool thing. And yeah, Tylen Grable in particular, he looked great throughout the preseason. I'm excited.
He did. Cromer's working his magic on him, and he has a Cromer profile. Again, just being a very athletic guy. It's kind of a surprise that he fell so late into the draft, but I guess the inexperience at the position was probably what put people off, and you had to put him in the hands of a good developmental offensive line coach, and you did. And you got a lot out of him in the preseason, and I think he more than earned his keep. Again, I think I said too, if I did the show with Uber, I'm trying to remember 2 weeks ago, which is kind of sad. I should remember that. But I did say, like, if they ended up going with Grable over Garage and chose the rookie as opposed to the guy they had for a season, I would have totally understood it. And I totally understand it now. He earned his shot. There's a lot of upside there for him. And yeah, if they had to compress it to 9, I probably would have said Collins would be the first to go there, only because limited versatility. He's older. I just liked him as another body for the interior part of the room. So if they went for 10, I would have been fine having him, especially on an incentive-based contract. But the show goes on for him. I hope he finds a good spot somewhere else, unless he somehow decides to come back to the practice squad. I don't think he would. I think he's going to want to play and be on an active roster. So I wish him well if he doesn't end up back in Buffalo. And these 9 are I'm still pretty confident in it, John. I mean, I feel good about this room. I think I felt a little stronger about it last year because you had Mitch Morse, you had your sure center, and you had Ryan Bates, who was just the Swiss Army man. But even then, it's a young room. There's a lot of upside for it. I love the athleticism that they have in the depth. I love the positional versatility over some of these guys, like Tylen Grable, who can play both tackle positions, Alec Anderson, who could kick over to center or be in an interior offensive lineman. Vandemark showed out well when he had to fill in for Dawkins, and SVPG, man, like, we were there when they made this pick too. This is a guy that I was, interested in because I saw that all of his snaps were center. He didn't have a lot of versatility. He was pretty much just playing center at Georgia, but also had flashes in the preseason and now could be your immediate second string center if you want to keep Anderson as a guard. So I like it. I'm cool with the complexion of the room. And the only surprise I had besides Collins was just Grable making it over Garage, but I'm pleased with it. I think it could be a solid unit, and we'll just have to find out in time. But that is the offensive side of the ball, John. Any final thoughts before we transition over to defense and talk about a move that the chat is really looking forward to talking about in depth? I can tell 2 moves, actually. But any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, one last thing I'll say about the offensive line. I am concerned that the pretty much majority of the makeup of this offensive line is like young upside guys. Like it's a little bit, it causes a little bit of concern. I'm very excited about all the players that they have there. But like you said, last year you had your stalwart center, Mitch Morse. Right now, that Connor McGovern, David Edwards combination between center and right guard is still, I think, a little bit of a work in progress and something to monitor as the season goes in. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic about that group, like I am the offensive line. But yeah, I think there's some bigger conversations to be had about expectations for the team this year. And I'm not sure if we have time to get into that, but I am excited for this line. I'm excited for this group. I'm excited about what they can potentially bring in the future and their development with Cromer. But yeah, all in all, it makes sense to me. I get it. And a lot of these guys like Cedric Van Granger, I'm super excited about their long-term upside.
Me too. And just to note too, for the injured reserve for the season, Travis Clayton and Tommy Doyle are on this list. So Clayton, I thought was just going to be an exemption because he was an international player. He actually gets an IR spot. So I don't know what he did. I don't remember hearing about his injury. I probably missed it because I wasn't really focused on it, but still two options too for maybe next season, unless they decide to move on from Doyle and Clayton. They just want to keep around. But I kept saying Travis Clayton was just an Aaron Cromer heat check. He saw this British dude who had crazy athletic traits and was like, sure, like, fuck it. It's the 7th round. Let's go. So, I mean, let's see what next year looks like, but just wanted to mention those names. But I also want to bring up this comment from Sweet Spike, younger and cheaper, plus upside. That's the way. At some point, they were going to have to do this, right? Like, this is just kind of the name of the game for a lot of positions in this roster, just trying to get younger and trying to bank on the development you have. And I think with offensive line, that is a position I trust a ton to have a lot of upside guys that you can get the most out of, because you have a coach that's proven he can get that out of some guys. So good comment from Sweet Spike. We're going to move on to defense just momentarily. But before we do, I want to tell you all about the one pass. Don't go anywhere. It's not going to take very long. So patience. But we have two gentlemen on the other line who would love to tell you about the one pass subscription. Their names are Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn. Gentlemen, what do you got?
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, my sweet friends, you should become a One Pass Insider today. As I say every week on this show, that One Pass subscription is the lifeblood of our network, as it allows us to have access to all of the resources that we use on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year, century-to-century basis, as we can find all of our stats, be able to pull all of the film, and do whatever we can to give you the analysis we give you on each and every one of our pieces of content on this network. So if you are not a member yet, I heavily implore you to do so. As always, the description has the link for you. You can check it out there. It is 60 gold doubloons to sign up. And now more than ever is an interesting and amazing time to become a One Pass member. Now you might notice I'm changing the screen. Why is Joe changing the screen? Because we are in the final week of our giveaway of 2 Keon Coleman jerseys. If you sign up for the One Pass today, you will automatically be entered into our giveaway to win one of these 2 jerseys. It is an awesome time to be a One Pass member. We have recently made the migration over to Discord and will promptly update our materials as well. But you guys, if you haven't signed up, if you have been thinking about it, pondering, toiling, considering, contemplating, everything that you can do, I suggest you do and sign up for the One Pass. And again, thank you so much to Greg and Aaron for joining us tonight to read that off for all of you. I am going to attempt to do the layout back. Let's see if this works. No, that didn't work. John, I lost you. There we go. I thought I was going to do that right. I did not do that right. I am ashamed. I will hang my head in shame for the rest of the evening. Let's move on to defense. Let's move on to defense. And Yes, John, this might be the most controversial topic we go over, at least the second most, depending on how you view it. The Edge room contains 6 members, and most of them we thought were making the roster as it was. I had in my prediction show said 5: Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epineza, Duwan Smoot, and Javon Solomon. All great things. I'm happy Solomon made it. Very excited for him. And then the Buffalo Bills go with the 6th edge rusher, Mr. Casey Tuhill. And we were not expecting that. I was not expecting it. I thought Casey Tuhill was going to get cut as soon as cuts began. But there is very clearly some sort of special teams contribution that he could provide, or maybe juice that they saw in practice that they felt was worth keeping, albeit at the expense of other positions, potentially one that many people are not happy about. So, John, talk to me about this room, your thoughts on the edge rushing group.
I like it. The Casey Tuhill one does really confuse me. I don't understand that. It's not like he has familiarity in this room. It's not like he had a great training camp. It's not like he had a great preseason. I don't really understand, but this might just be one of those situations where there was too much emphasis being put on what he did with Buffalo this summer, and not enough emphasis being put on what they believe that he's capable of doing when the games matter. That's kind of all that I got. That's the only thing that I can figure out why they would go that route. He is coming off his best year as a pass rusher. Last year, he had 5 sacks with Washington. So maybe they do think that there's some ability here for him to be a rotational pass rush guy where they're not going to depend on him too much against the run or for a large amount of snaps, but that they think that he has the tools and the traits and the experience to be able to come in as a rotational depth piece and contribute on special teams. And I think that has to be it. Like, I don't know what else to hang my hat on when it comes to him making the 53-man roster than that.
Yeah. I don't think I could say really much else to that point, because that's what it feels like. You know, maybe he does well in special teams. Maybe the change in the special teams rules at kickoff affected how they viewed him potentially in that role. And maybe he was doing well in the practices at that spot. And again, coming off his best year, maybe they felt that because Javon Solomon is an unproven guy, the security blanket of someone who has been a rotational edge rusher before that could come in and provide a higher floor to that group that is a bit of a question mark now, could be the logic that maybe, just maybe, we wanted just the extra body if we felt that we could make the space for it, because we feel that then we could feel a little more comfortable about how many people we're rotating. But even with that logic, I still didn't think he was the person to put in, because I had originally said I thought they were going to go with 5 and 5 edge rusher DT, and I thought Solomon would be the last on the depth chart and just be the rotational guy. But they value Tuhill, and I think that it was a surprise for a lot of people, myself included. But Steve Noble brings up a great point, and it's something that I've read today in our Discord, and other people had made it on the show. But he says, I think if we pick someone up, Tuhill is the first guy to go. He is the casualty if we could find someone we want to add. And I do think that's a good point.
This is what I was saying earlier when we were talking about the wide receivers and how I feel like there's room on the defensive side to cut someone. This is what I was talking about. If they decide that they can go get a Noah Brown, then I think that Casey Tuhill's got to be the first person to go to make room for him. So that's, I don't know. We're not done yet. We'll see what the roster looks like on opening day. But for right now, that's kind of just where I'm at with them.
Yeah, I think it's weird because you don't want to have someone on your active roster that winds up being the like sacrificial lamb, almost. Like if you give them a spot, you want to give them a spot because you're confident that they're going to get a shot to play and have a meaningful role in some capacity. But really, like, this could be the case. If they feel like they find a player valuable enough to shore up depth at a different position, I do think if they were looking at this chart, that he would be the one to go. Again, it's not even just for me. Like, I'm not trying to even bag on Tuhill too much as a player, because he came off a decent season. And before they drafted Solomon, if they never did that and decided to keep him as that 5th edge rusher, I would have been totally fine with him being the 5. It's more of I find it to be a little bit redundant unless his special teams ability is that good. But I think when I look at the positional groups and I look at who would I be willing to cut based on who's there, who might be on the IR that could come back eventually, that is the option that I look at and say he'd be the first to go. So I do think this is a great point brought up. We'll see if they actually do it. But for now, it's 6 edge rushers with Casey Toohill running the room. And if he stays on the team and doesn't end up getting cut or waived or whatever, then hey, maybe he contributes in a positive way, and there would have to be a logic for it from the coaching staff that I'm just going to have to trust going into the year. But now we pivot over to DT. And when we pivot over to DT, like I said, I thought it was 5. They actually go 4. They go Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter. They did not keep Deshaun Williams. But I said to you earlier, John, that what I think is with DeJuan Smoot, who has positional versatility, the 6'4" that they have arranged on the edge rushing group and DT now still kind of is 5'5", because DeJuan Smoot can slide over into the interior if he needs to. And also, you got 2 3 techs, 2 1 techs here. So now you can have Smoot pair up with a 1 tech if you wanted to be an interior pass rush presence if you needed him to be, which I do like. And then in turn, it kind of makes more sense now and you see it as a 5'5". So what are your thoughts on the DT room?
This, in my opinion, is one of the stronger units on the entire roster. I love Ed Oliver for obvious reasons. I love Daquan Jones for obvious reasons. They have faded at times in big games. So yeah, I know that's going to be one of the first comments that comes up with them. And yeah, well, they don't do anything in the playoffs. Okay, I get it. Hopefully they can get that, that monkey off their back if we make the playoffs this year and show up when it matters, or just show up when we play Kansas City late in the season. You know what I mean? Like, let's do something to put that narrative to bed. But these are very good defensive tackles. It also gives me an opportunity to use my favorite nickname for a player ever, which started on a comment on one of your tweets months ago, Dwayne Blastoise Carter, because he looks exactly like the dude. It is the perfect nickname. I will take no comments at this time. Dwayne Carter was a home run of a draft pick. He was the draft pick that we got in trading down with the Kansas City Chiefs to allow them to take Xavier Worthy. He was the added pick that came in. And I wish that everyone could have seen your reaction to Dwayne Carter being drafted, because you were losing your mind in the media workroom in Detroit. It was an incredible pick. It was a home run pick. I loved it too, but you were like, you were going nuts. Freaking. You were freaking out about that draft pick. Man. So I love this group. I think it's good. They've been hyping up Carter a lot throughout the summer. Sean McDermott was talking shortly after the blue and red game about how they were expecting him to be one of the important rotational defensive tackles in that 3rd or 4th defensive tackle spot, is what he said. And that caught my attention because that was like a month before roster cuts. And he's like, oh, okay, we're already circling this rookie as being an important member, a rotational piece on the interior of the defensive line where you need bodies coming in and out. He's going to get a lot of minutes. He's going to play a meaningful role on this defense early, and he's going to have 2 great defensive tackles in Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones to learn from. It's a perfect spot for Dwayne Carter. I love it.
I said that I thought DT was one of the strongest groups, and even beyond Dwayne, I almost just said Montgomery because someone named Shane Montgomery just left a comment saying, "Big Dwayne, that's my future son-in-law right there." If that's wow, that's sick. If that's actually like his future father-in-law, that's really freaking cool. Good for you, man. Congratulations if that is you. And if that's not actually him, then that's a really funny comment to pick up in the chat.
He's setting up his daughter, all right.
Didn't even say like I was like a father or anything, just said father-in-law. That's awesome. But if that is actually, that's cool. But I love the DT room. I think the interior D line is one of the strengths of the team. I do think that I still have some concerns over their injury history, especially Daquan Jones coming off the torn pectoral and not being 100% when he came back. But as you alluded to, I love the Dwayne Carter pick. I thought he was going to be an absolute stud out of Duke. I thought he had just menacing pass rush ability, even though it wasn't very, like, it was really kind of like a bull rush and a couple moves mixed in. He was good at it. He was eating doubles. He had a better year prior to his final year, but I saw all the potential there to fit into this DT room, and I absolutely loved him as a prospect. So when they picked Dwayne Carter, as Shane Montgomery says, dated my daughter since they were 13, please know that I freaked the hell out over your future son-in-law getting picked to the Bills.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Yes, that's fantastic. But I was pumping my fist in victory because Dwayne Carter was one of the DTs I legitimately not only mocked to the team, but wanted for the team. Like I saw the vision. They pick him up, and he is going to be your primary 3-tech behind Ed Oliver. They were giving him some doubles duty in the preseason. There were some mixed results. However, I don't think he's going to be getting it as much in the regular season because the preseason, you're giving guys kind of the more difficult things. And like Bruce Nolan actually made a fantastic point about this on his show. I think it was his most recent episode or 2 weeks ago, where he had said that when you go into a preseason game, it's not so much the score, but it's also what are these players being asked to do in their assignments. And what you'll probably have them do is the more difficult task, because that's how you're going to get better. And he made the comparison to like swinging a baseball bat when you're on deck before you actually go up to bat, and he's got the ring on and it makes it heavier. It's kind of the idea, I think, is what they did for Carter. Is I didn't think Carter was going to be dealing with too many doubles this year, but he was eating doubles like pretty much all the preseason, at least at times. So I am very excited to see what he looks like as their primary 3T. And again, I think it's a strong group. And one thing to say as well is Elianko got cut, but I think Anko ends up going back on the practice squad again like he's been before. If he does, then I still maintain my position that it's a deep DT room because he is the perfect DT to bring up if you need a run stopper to come up and fill in the void if someone gets hurt or just needs the additional depth. If you're facing pretty much like a really good running team, which they're going to face a few this year. So it's a room I'm encouraged by. Again, I think Smoot is like a de facto DT too, which makes it a 5-5 in my eyes, but it is 6-4 by actual logistical sake. And it's going to be fun to watch. Stay healthy. And I think you got a gem of a DT room that's going to cause havoc. And I hope that guys like Carter and Johnson can just continue being a part of that. Moving on to linebacker. This might be the biggest news of the day. John, I know you messaged me before about this. I'm very excited to talk about it. Now, I want to preface, I did my roster prediction episode 2 weeks ago. I did it before that Steeler game because I was going on vacation, AKA go figure that I do a roster prediction. I don't mention his name once except for practice squad. And then he gets reps with the ones and ends up balling out, and it changes the entire complexion of the room. But I'm happy for him. I am not angry. It is a good reason. It's a good thing to complain about. Mr. Joe Andreessen, Mr. Buffalo Joe, makes the 53-man roster and rounds out the linebacker room. Just a freaking-tastic story. A round of applause for the guy. Listen, it's just, you wanted it, even if you were like one of those people that kind of saw it as like, oh, is he really like the person we want to fill the room out? Like, you have to tip your cap and kind of give the edge just for the story alone. A Buffalo local, Lancaster. So a Western New York local. Yeah. Lancaster, played at Lancaster High School, went to UB, and then tries out for the team. So an undrafted free agent that tries out for the Bills, gets picked up to go to training camp, does well in training camp, has flashes in his first preseason game, then all of a sudden is getting reps with ones, looks really freaking good with the ones. Obviously, some things he's got to clean up, but for someone who is undrafted to take that mic role when you're talking about Bernard not playing, did really freaking well and made some really nice plays, especially against the run. Then transition over to the next week where he has a few more flash plays, still some things to clean up in coverage, but did enough to make the 53-man roster, Buffalo Joe Andreessen. It is an awesome story. So, John, anything you want to say about that or just the linebacker room in general and what you think of it?
I mean, I'm just excited. Like everybody, it's an incredible story, but he also showed promise as a player. And I don't want it to get lost in the wash here where people are saying like, oh yeah, cool, that's a good story. It's like, no, he showed that he has capability. He showed that he's able to step in. He showed that he's able to identify things that are happening and trigger and shoot the gap and log a lot of tackles. He showed that he's able to get off blocks. He showed pretty decently in pass coverage. There's still some stuff there that he does need to clean up. Like you said, there was a couple opportunities, like the big one in the last preseason game, his miscommunication with Deion Jones, their miscommunication was a bad one. And it resulted in a wide open touchdown. Okay, cool. The guy still needs some coaching. He still needs to learn, but the physical traits, what he was able to show, he looks promising. And hopefully you don't need him a lot in games, because if you do, that means that there were some serious injuries that went wrong. And, you're not hoping to be counting on this guy, but to have that ability and to have those flashes and that work ethic and that persistence and to get the rave reviews out of the coaching staff to the point where you're making the 53, not just that you're like a priority practice squad guy, You're on the 53-man roster for now. We'll see what happens. But he's on the 53-man roster after the cutdown day. That is just massive. Couldn't be more excited, and I'm legitimately tempted to go out and buy a jersey because this is our Rudy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the best story, and you can't help but root for him and hope for nothing but success.
It doesn't happen often, and really, like, listen, even if it's a 1-year thing, there's still a lot of hype behind the story in general, and people aren't going to forget about this. So even if Andreessen's the 6-man and game day inactive, and like Milano comes back and they put him on the practice squad or demote him or something like that, like,
right.
It's still awesome that he got to this spot. Like, this is a victory in itself, but it would just be really cool if because the thing is, he's playing mostly Mike, right? So, like, you're obviously not going to take Bernard off the field unless he's hurt, which you don't want him to be. So, like, the role for Andreessen's probably going to be special teams with room to, like, fill in if end of games or, God forbid, someone goes down. But I love that he made it. I think they obviously found a role for him. They love that, one, he's young and he's cost controlled, so that always helps. But it's still just an awesome story. And if it has to be something where he eventually makes it to the practice squad, like, that's still a good guy to have on your practice squad, just from a skill set standpoint, just from the position standpoint. And also, like, again, yes, there's things to clean up in pass coverage. Absolutely. He has a lot of work to do there, but still some flashes in run defense that you can get out of him. And also, like, what an undrafted free agent, like, he's going to need to be coached up, right? Like, he's going to need his reps and his licks, and he's going to have to fail before he gets better. This is just an example of that, and I think he's more than earned that spot. Even if Milano going down might be part of the reason why he got it, I don't care. He deserved it. I'm happy he's there. Good for Buffalo Joe. And as for the rest of the room, again, Bernard, Dorian Williams, Balin Spector, Nicholas Morrow, and Defulano Ulofoshio, excuse me. Like, I had them going 5 linebackers originally with Milano. I made this prediction before the bicep injury. He goes down. They end up going with 6 anyway, and they ended up keeping Morrow, which I thought was interesting because Morrow, again, playing in the Eagles and played the Mike, like, he's got experience there. I think he is the veteran presence, even though you've had guys that have been here a couple of years. I think it's a pretty solid linebacker room. I thought it was the strength of the team. My ranking on it changed a little bit when Milano went down, but I still think it's pretty damn strong, and I'm looking forward to it. So, John, any final thoughts on that room outside of Joe before we move on to corner?
I don't think so. I am kind of it was interesting to see Edifon Olufashio on the roster just because he didn't show up a whole lot during the preseason process. I thought that he might end up as more of a practice squad guy, even though they used a 5th-round draft pick on him. But he's there. I think they like the flashes and they like the athleticism that you see from him. And they need the depth at a real will linebacker type guy, someone that can go chase from the backside. So I think that's the thought process behind making sure that he's on that roster. Because like you said, Andreessen's a Mike. Morrow is a Mike. Balin Spector, more of a Mike guy as well. So I think that that's why you see Edifon on this roster, is because the will spot is a big question mark. I mean, you're counting on Dorian Williams and Edifon as your 2 will linebackers until Matt Milano comes back. That is a position that I could see them trying to address. I would not rule out a will linebacker. I still have to kind of take a look and sift through who all was cut today and who's going to be available on waivers and stuff like that. But if there's someone out there that they feel comfortable at, that has a veteran experience at that position, I wouldn't be surprised for them to bring in someone into that spot. And then maybe you do see, Casey Toohill go with that one. Maybe that does bump Joe Andreessen, unfortunately, down to the practice squad. I don't know, but we'll see how it works out. I'm not ruling out them looking for a will linebacker in the coming days.
It's a possibility, but I think Dorian Williams getting that shot with Milano down and being that instant turn to, and then them drafting this kid in the 5th round, they might. I don't know how likely it would be. I feel like they're really going to want to see what they get out of Dorian Williams before they have to make an emergency move. Because again, like, giving up the capital for a guy that might not even play just to be a security blanket, you might as well just have a rookie take that spot. I think probably going to, again, get some special teams play, especially with the changes to the rules. But I'm wondering if he ends up becoming maybe what they viewed Dotson as last year before Milano got hurt, as your primary outside guy that again, is very good maybe at diagnosing runs and being able to handle that, but maybe not as good in pass coverage, at least to start. And you end up trying to pivot over to more of a dime look if you have to do that, which they did a few times last year with Jordan Poyer, maybe something along those lines. But a lot of that will room and what that's going to look like to me really just hinges on Dorian Williams' pass coverage ability, because I think as far as athleticism, as far as how he can hit the run, he'll do well. especially if he's just, shooting his gaps, if he's hitting the outside and trying to bring people down or disrupt things. Absolutely. But it's pass coverage. Like, is he going to get baited on anything that causes any disguises, any play actions? Like, is he going to get baited into making the wrong move and losing a step on someone who's coming over the middle? Like, all these things have to be taken into account because they were lapses in his game last year. So if he improves in that, I feel like that's going to just, kind of make everyone wipe their foreheads a little bit and feel better about that pass coverage before Milano gets back. But if not, then I'm wondering if Ed can't do that either, Eddie Ulofoshio, I can't say it fast, but if he doesn't have any sort of improvement in that game, maybe they pivot over to that as well, but we'll have to see. But ultimately, I'm still pretty good about the room. I'm happy with it. It's not anything too unexpected, except for me. Again, I didn't have Joe Andreessen originally. I didn't have Milano being done till possibly December, and I didn't have Morrow. So some changes, still a strong group. Now moving on to corner, and another controversial position because most of it is what I expected. Teron Johnson, Russell Douglas, Christian Benford, Kyer Elam, who I'm happy they didn't trade, at least not yet, hopefully not out, because he had a pretty good preseason in camp. Jamarcus Ingram, who I'm very happy made the roster because I think he earned the shot, as Pops Mafia here says. Glad to see Jamarcus Ingram kept working until they put him on the 53. Also have to...
Me too.
This is a great comment from him. If it's a one-year thing, Joe will just go back to his season ticket location. That's funny. But hey, I hope it's not just a one-year thing. If he's good enough, I hope they keep him around for a while. But then we get to the end of the cornerback room, and I had said I thought it was going to be Daquan Hardy. Daquan Hardy gets cut, and they actually make a trade for Brandon Codrington from the Jets, an undrafted free agent, return ability, and also DB. Don't think anyone saw that coming. Nope. I think a lot of people were very much expecting Daquan Hardy to make the roster outright. He did not, but I'm wondering if the potential injury he was suffered, because there's been whispers of it on Twitter that he dealt with some sort of injury in the last preseason game. I do wonder if that affected how they wanted to maneuver him for the roster, and if they feel that they could get him through waivers successfully because of it and get him back. What do you think, John, just about that and then about the room?
Yeah, I mean, the injury is interesting because, like you said, there's been whispers. There's been nothing substantial reported on it, nothing along those lines that would indicate any sort of major concern. Yeah, he apparently had x-rays done after the last game, but there's been nothing else about it. So I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect. They basically went out and got a guy that's incredibly similar to him. He's an undersized defensive back that's also a return specialist who is an undrafted guy. And just like Joe Andreessen, he was a tryout guy during rookie minicamp for the Jets that he had to come in. He went to... what small school was it? I don't have it
North
up in front of me right
Carolina. I had
Central,
it up, North Carolina Central Eagles.
Yeah, North Carolina Central University.
Awesome.
A guy that I was not familiar with at all. But this preseason looked incredibly good, especially in the return game. So I had Daquan Hardy written in ink to make this roster and be the primary return guy. I thought that was basically locked in, and then it was, okay, what are you guys going to fill out at other positions? Because I'm like, okay, if Hardy's making it, then that means that they're going to be keeping, 6 corners. So who's going to be the 6th? Is it going to be Kyron Brown? Is it going to be Takori Couch? Like, who's going to be the 6th guy in that room? And then all of a sudden they don't go with Daquan Hardy because they just traded in the division, by the way, with the Jets, which is baffling, to get Brandon Codrington in to be, by all accounts, the primary return guy. So it's a real interesting move. I thought Daquan Hardy looked good. He looked explosive. He was making a lot better decisions in the last game. And it's not like you brought in someone who has a proven track record in the NFL, who is going to make more veteran, choices in the return game than what Daquan Hardy was going to do. You're bringing in another rookie who had, smaller school experience in college than Hardy did, and you've never had this guy in the room to talk in person and work through things and see what he's going to be like in practice. So I thought it was a really kind of bold move to part with Hardy for this other unknown asset that you have less knowledge on, less visual on, less time that you've had eyes on this player. It's interesting. I'm curious to see how it's going to work out. Maybe Daquan Hardy does have a pretty substantial injury and we're just not aware of it. So this was just the move that they had to make to bring someone in. I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot that is still being figured out in the next couple days.
Just the tip of canoe hits us with the South Central Louisiana State Mud Dogs. That's an awesome
Yep.
pull. Yeah, I think Daquan, I do wonder about the severity. I do wonder if it affected anything, but I did see, in the brief, because to be honest with you, I had no idea of anything to do with Brandon Codrington until the trade happened. I wasn't expecting anything of it. I just thought, it'd probably be just another body floating around, but I'm not going to pretend like I knew everything about this guy. I did look up his snap share and what he was playing at North Carolina Central, and he was actually primarily a wide corner. He wasn't playing as much slot as he was playing wide at 5'9", 180 were his measurements. So that's pretty wild. But I mean, listen, Daquan Hardy was also having some success on the boundaries and had that versatility despite being kind of the same frame. So they always value people that can play above their frame. It doesn't mean everything. And in this case, it still doesn't mean everything because they went for a guy who had a similar profile. As far as Hardy goes, I do wonder if he clears it. I hope he does because I really liked him. I really like what he was having a good preseason, man. And it wasn't just like little here and there things. The return ability definitely left something to be desired. But to me, I was painting him as the primary backup nickel corner. Like that's where my hopes were for him. And you were seeing really nice plays in coverage in both spots where he was actually breaking on the ball, diagnosing what they were doing, had a couple of missed interceptions. I think maybe a couple inches of height might help with that, but even not, like, still making plays on the ball. He was effective. He was there. And it just feels weird that they decided to part ways with him, which almost makes me think it's not the end of Daquan Hardy in Buffalo. And if that injury is something that would sideline him long enough, does that mean that teams are a little hesitant to bring him in? And therefore he clears waivers for that, and you can get him and stash him on the practice squad, recover, and then eventually have him be a fill-in, and maybe Codrington is just a body to occupy the space with the return ability until he goes and you bring Hardy back to it. It just feels like the move was very sudden. I understand why. I know he has the similar skill set, similar ability to return. I don't know. It's the move that definitely, if I had to tell you my most surprising move, 100% this one. I was not expecting it, did not see it coming, but them's the breaks right now. He is on the Buffalo Bills active roster. He will likely get nods as a returner if they don't make any sort of sudden move till then. And for that reason, I think, I'll ride for him and I'll support him if he ends up keeping the spot. There is no Hardy and he's the guy. But I really did think Hardy was going to get that shot. I like him a lot. I hope he can come back. I think a lot of fans share that mindset. We'll just have to see if it happens. But moving on to safety, a room that did not really bring any surprises. If anything, I feel a little more comfortable and a little more confident with the fact that they did move on from Kareem Jackson. They did move on from Burgess is on the IR, I believe, season-ending IR. So, and D. Delaney too. So Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, Cam Lewis, DeMar Hamlin. Again, moving on from those vets. Unless they make a sudden pivot, sudden trade, whatever, or call someone up, or I'm sorry, not call someone up, pick someone up off of waivers or sign somebody, whatever it may be. It sounds like Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop are trending in a very good direction to be able to play week one, or at the least one of the two could play week one. But the room itself, not surprising. I'm pretty sure I had it painted this exact same way. I consider Cam Lewis both corner safety, so he was in both lists, but this matches up. Anything about the safety room? Do you feel it's good? Do you have any surprises? Or are you kind of just like, yeah, this is it?
I mean, I was disappointed throughout the preseason that there were so many nagging injuries in this room that we never really got to see it. And I think that's what's concerning to me, is that we never really got to see this room healthy and see any sort of chemistry develop and stuff like that. So I think it's still very much a work in progress, which not ideal. But especially coming off, we've had so much stability at that position group for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years, whatever it's been, that now all of a sudden you have a changing of the guard, and to not get a consistent off season and preseason in together where you are working on the communication and establishing it and understanding the system and stuff like that, I have concerns. Now, we do have DeMar Hamlin in the building who has familiarity. Absolutely. And I think if you were to ask me right now, I think he's your week one starter opposite Taylor Rapp based on his understanding in the system and the ability that he showed throughout the preseason. I think that he'd probably be your week one starter, especially since Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop have been hurt for basically a month. So I don't know who's going to get the nod opposite Taylor Rapp to start with. I think we're going to see a lot of combinations throughout the course of the year, which leaves me a little bit unsettled. I don't love that. but I think there is a combination of veteran experience in this room, along with high upside youth in Cole Bishop, the versatility that he can bring playing down in the box, playing back at the free safety position. He can go all over the place. So I like the direction of the room, but it almost feels like the room is a little bit of a stopgap, not quite to like its final form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm curious in terms of how it's going to develop. Is someone really going to like take over one of these positions and put the others behind them on the depth chart? Are they going to rotate Cole Bishop down and see what he does at nickel? I don't know how this is going to work out throughout the course of the year. And I think we're going to see a lot of different alignments.
I agree with that. I had said that I think it's going to be the biggest question mark of the team until proven otherwise. I do like the veteran presence of Mike Edwards, especially being in a very physical defense in Kansas City that ended up winning a Super Bowl. So, you got a lot of experience there. You bring that to the Bills defense. He can play up high. I think that's valuable. And what I think that adds is now not forcing Rapp to play what I think he's weaker at of his two spots as safety, or not two, you know what I mean? Like at least closer to the line versus further away from the line. I think that Mike Edwards being healthy does make me feel more comfortable, but yeah, it's still unproven. Taylor Rapp, again, I think he has physical ability. I think he can be a menace in that regard, but I worry about his communication as a starter. I want to see it kind of fleshed out as the season goes on and be in the right spot and not have those lapses. And with Cole Bishop, it's just the unproven rookie. I think if you play him closer to the line, that's better for him just to start. I had said originally that I thought he could be the starter if he had a good camp. He gets hurt in camp. Now, I think if you have these two vets just to shore that up and have him rotate in as a closer to the line role, that to me is fine for now. I still think he will eventually become a starter, and I'm very confident in him, but I just have to see it. And again, Cam Lewis, we've seen what he's done in a limited time as safety to fill in. He's obviously just someone who has positional versatility, but he's not the best at any one of these things. And then Damar Hamlin, I don't think Damar Hamlin is just a special teams guy. I think he could be a perfectly capable safety if you need him to be. I would just prefer to have some of these other guys that they brought in, bring back Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, or just the rookie and Cole Bishop be your kind of primary turn as far as safety goes. And Hamlin, I feel a bit more comfortable as a rotational piece. If he has to start for any injury reason whatsoever, so be it. But I'd rather him just be the fill-in. But it's a room that I'm fine with. I definitely love your comment about it being stopgap because I feel the same way. I don't think this is the end-all, be-all safety room. Like, we've had so many years of Poyer and Hyde that we got spoiled by the fact that we always just knew it would be Poyer and Hyde and some depth options. And if they go down, that's it. Like, they'll fill in with the depth, and then those guys come back when they can. Now it's this complexion of the room might be a very dramatic change even next year after first year. Like, I think Cole Bishop is a staple of what they do in the future, but is Mike Edwards, or do they move on eventually from other guys that are their depth options? Do they draft another young safety? Like, it does feel like, and similar to my feeling about wide receiver, that this is an incomplete room that they're going to rock with for the year, make it serviceable. Cause I do trust Babich and McDermott to get a lot out of that group, but probably be more improved with more draft capital and salary cap room as the years go on. So it's not surprising. I think this is what we all expected the room to look like. Is it going to be the best safety room in Bills history? I'm going to wager no, but I'd love to be proven wrong. But I still think it could be a perfectly fine group that performs well, holds tight pass coverage. And if you have a lot of faith in the front seven, which I do, probably, that component can help mitigate some of the deficiencies at safety if you're worried about Bishop's development or maybe instant plug and play ability from Mike Edwards or Taylor Rapp emerging as a starter for the team. So that's really all I got to say about safety. And then kicker, punter, long snapper, Tyler Bass, Sam Martin, Reed Ferguson. We knew this was coming, but John, just any thoughts on really, I'll make it more specific to kicker and punter because Reed Ferguson seems like a great dude. We know what he's going to do, and he's been a capable long snapper for a long time. Nice to see they didn't make him do the parking lot deal. I don't know if that's coming still. I don't think it is, but nice to see that he actually just gets to sit on the 53 and they put his picture on the website. But Bass and Martin, Tyler Bass has a lot of concern. I have a lot of concern about him. Sam Martin, kind of the same thing to a lesser degree in my eyes. Just your thoughts on those two, them this season, what you're feeling about it.
I feel like it is what it is. I feel like these are the guys. I think especially with Tyler Bass, there's been a lot of talk about him, especially with him missing a kick last week against the Panthers in the final preseason game. But you knew that he's going to be the kicker. That guaranteed money, he is your kicker. He's not going anywhere. So all the talk about we should replace him. And it's like, no, You don't pay dead cap to a kicker. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. Like, this is going to be the kicker until his contract is in a better place where you can move on from it. And I think that he's a good kicker, not a great kicker. I think that he can make a lot of kicks. I think that confidence is his biggest issue. I feel like he gets in his own head, and that's what leads to some of these misses. It's kind of like a wide receiver with a concentration drop. It's kind of the same thing with Tyler Bass. He's going to be your kicker. And listen, there's going to be plenty of opportunities where he's put on the field and asked to make a kick to either win the game or tie the game. And I'm going to be nervous every time. But it doesn't change the fact that he's the kicker. Like, he's going to be the guy that's back there doing it this year. So it just is what it is. And you support him. And I can't encourage people enough to like ease up on the guy. Like, it's got to be exhausting having an entire fan base that's just like ragging on him all the time. And like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. Let's just ease up and support him and try to help him, believe in himself, which I know sounds like you're coddling a professional, and I get it. But if confidence is what he struggles with, it's not going to be helped by an entire fan base ripping on him every time he misses a kick. So I don't know. It's tough because he's in a position where we've already put the faith into him. And at this point, faith is like all that we have. And I can't remember if it was Greg. I don't remember where I heard it. It was one of the Cover One guys that said like faith isn't a plan. And I get that. But at this point, it is our plan. Right. It's all that we have. It's what it's going to be this year. So buckle up. He's probably going to miss a couple that you're going to want back. But he's going to be the kicker.
And missing the 50, what was it, a 51-yarder, I think, in the final preseason game on good condition. Like, I have concerns. There's no other way to put it. I'm not optimistic right now. And you guys know me. I'm a very optimistic person by nature. It's hard to be. And I feel bad for him. I do. Like, I know people can bag on a kicker any day of the week. And I've criticized him on Twitter before. Absolutely. But like, I do feel bad for the guy because you got to understand, like, back in the day when he got his extension back in the day 2 years ago, it was deserved in my eyes. I thought he did a great job. Like, there were some misses here and there, but he also had several game-winning kicks and clutch spots that you needed, and he came through multiple times. So, like, I do think that it was a justifiable decision to extend him while you still could and that you had your guy. But really, kicker's just such a weird position. And it just goes to show you the difficulty and longevity out of a kicker, because a few good years here and there, like, that happens. But to get like decades worth of consistent kicker play is a luxury that not many teams have. And like, you look at the Harrison Buckers, the Justin Tuckers of the league, like, these are guys that are really, like, I don't want to call them exceptions to the rule, but when you look for that, it's hard to get it. And it, unfortunately, with Tyler Bass, seems to be trending in a direction of the Bills placed hope that they had that guy, and they don't know if they have him now. And you still haven't been really given any indication that he is that guy. And not for nothing, I understand that 45 to 50 to 55, like, those are not gimme kicks, but in the modern NFL, it's not that they have to be, but you're expecting it a little bit more. There's less leeway for those kicks to be missed, especially on good conditions. So to miss a 51-yarder in good conditions, that does worry me. Again, I don't know if there was anything set up pre-snap or pre-decision to go for it that maybe they did differently from what he usually does. But I need to see consistency in regular season. And right now, I'm not optimistic about it. And my hope is that the Bills offense is productive enough where if they do get into those field goal decisions, they're not putting him in a bind where it's a deep distance, but rather like, okay, we could set him up from like the inside 45-yard range and feel a little more comfortable. Because I do think when he gets this is obvious, but when he gets a little closer, it becomes a little more of a gimme for him. He has a strong leg. So we'll see. I think is what it is a fair comment.
Yeah, and I hate saying it is what it is. It feels like a cop-out, but it just is the reality of the situation that has to be accepted. This is who the kicker is going to be. I think it's tough when you're talking about a kicker playing outdoors in Buffalo with wind and conditions. Like, it's not an easy place to kick. But like you said, it was a preseason game in August in perfect conditions with no wind and a warm day, and he still missed it, and it just pushed it right. It's not exactly inspiring. I do think that his limitations as a kicker might weigh into some decisions that we see this year, where it's like, okay, it's 4th and 2 and the kick is 53 yards. Are we kicking it or are we going for it? Well, it depends on the game situation and how much time is left. And like, I think that you can see some situations where McDermott's going to have to make some choices. Do you subject him to that? Or do you think that Josh Allen gives you a better chance to pick up 2 or 3 yards
Right.
than your kicker does at making a kick that you would expect an NFL kicker to make. But if he's only 60% from that range or whatever it is on the season, I don't know. You might trust your offense a little bit more in that spot.
And also, how much more added pressure does this add to your defense now? Because if you have concerns about them in pass coverage, because maybe the safety room isn't panning out like we had hoped, or there's injury or something along those lines, now there's
pass
even
rush
more
isn't
pressure.
getting home.
Or pass rush isn't getting home, or put it all together, the defense isn't performing at the level you'd want them to, where you felt comfortable in Bass missing. Not that you want him to, but that you felt comfortable that your defense could maintain position if Bass misses at a distance like that and gives really good field position to whoever you're facing. And I think that is like something you do have to keep in mind when you're talking about these decisions on 4th down. Because if it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, even maybe even higher, and you're talking about we're past midfield, do we trust Tyler Bass? Do we think that the risk outright or the reward is there, or even if he misses, we can hold it down? Or do we feel like we just got to consistently go for it on 4th down because we don't have that much faith? And truthfully, when you have Josh Allen, you do have a pretty damn good chance every time of getting it, but I don't want them to have to kind of live in spite of their kicker, but it feels like unless we see a drastic turnaround from him, that's going to be the case. So I am hoping for Bills fans' sake, for team's sake, Tyler Bass figures it out, puts it together, get some confidence, maybe some good opportunities and difficult kicks he's making early in the year that makes him more confident in his leg, and he regains it. I just need to see it. I haven't seen it recently. I didn't see it at the end of last year. I didn't see it in preseason. So I need to see it at some point, or I think it's a ticking time bomb, and he's going to eventually, as much as it sucks, and I don't wish this on anyone, lose the job to somebody else. So, John, we navigated this whole roster. We navigated it all. And I found one comment before. I didn't want to let this be ignored. I don't think the potential injury is severe enough to put him on IR, and they can only give 2 people at Cutdown Day the IR spot to be able to return in the year. Otherwise, he had to be out for the entire season. So to me, it's kind of the idea of the injury wasn't severe enough for us to place him on the IR. So if it is, as it's being said that I've seen on Twitter and in our Discord, then maybe the idea is not severe enough for IR, but teams might not want to wait around for a rookie to heal up to be able to contribute in a death roll versus just getting someone else to do that. Whereas maybe the Bills let him go because teams don't, take him for that injury. They end up slipping through the cracks and get him back. And it was kind of like this convoluted way of like avoiding the IR while retaining the player and not putting pressure on him to heal up anytime soon because you have the depth. So that's my theory. I don't know if that's what they're thinking. I don't know if that'll actually come true. That's just how I'm feeling about it. So, John, any final comments or any final things you want to talk about before we wrap up the show tonight?
It's a very interesting roster. I think there's a lot of youth and upside. I think we're going to be counting on a lot of people to take steps forward. It's interesting. It's a really interesting roster construction, and I think that it's important for Bills fans to almost kind of keep in mind that it's not just championship or bust. And I think that it is fair to expect this roster to be a little bit of a retooling year. And I know I'm like ducking from, bottles and tomatoes getting thrown in my head for saying it, but I think that you drafted a lot of players. You have a lot of youth that you're expecting to develop, and the cap situation is not a great one this year, but it's set up well for next year. So I think that this is a team where you're trying to cement your young core. You're trying to get production out of young players. You're going to see if Keon Coleman is a hit. You're going to see if Khalil Shakir takes a big step forward, if Dalton Kincaid takes a big step forward, if your running back room looks good. And then you go into next year armed with more abilities to potentially make stuff happen and put a more formidable team on paper. Now, I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I'd love to see this team be a 12-win team and just crush it this year and make a run at the playoffs. And with Josh Allen, you're capable of winning every game.
Yep.
And that's always within the realm of outcomes. But I think that it's fair to go into this season with a little bit of a realistic lens and hope to see good football, hope to see development from the young players, and then hope to see promise for the next 2 to 3 years as being a legitimate Super Bowl push.
Yes, I agree with that real fast. I brought this up before. I forgot to mention it. But shout out to Ed. I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'm going to call him Ed. And if you're watching on YouTube replay, Ed, please tell me how to pronounce your last name in the comments if you're still here, because I don't want to do it a disservice. But mentions that the Bills are looking, or what do you call it? Bills looking at Mike White, and he did come in for a visit. So if you're talking about your practice squad quarterback, or I saw some people talk about them potentially waiving Mitch in the comments. So if that does happen and Mike White becomes your backup, okay with that. Totally fine with that. I like Mike White as a backup. That'd be perfectly fine by me. But to go off your comment, yes, retool is not the wrong word to use. And I think we could be optimistic. I'm optimistic, but I'm also like not going to lie about what the team is. It's not the best version of what we've seen them be in the past. There is still plenty of potential for the team to live up to expectations of their ceilings at different positional groups and be competitive and still win double-digit games. That's all still there. But if you're asking me if I think this is the strongest team I've seen in the Josh Allen era, I would tell you no. I think they have to prove a lot more. There's a lot more uphill battles. There's a lot more ifs to get to that, ultimate goal, which is a Super Bowl. I don't think that they have, as much confidence from me right now. Not saying it can happen, saying just looking at them on paper, I don't think it's the best construction, but I also think that, again, the same way I've said, like, wide receiver has to be viewed in tandem with other positional groups. I think this roster has to be viewed in tandem with the context of what they've done and what they're going to do. They've shed a lot of money. They've lost a lot of older players. They've moved on from other players. They're trying to preserve their dollars and now move on to next season. They're going to open up more cap space. They have 10 picks in next year's draft already, potentially more, because apparently Tim Settle made the Texans roster. They might be comp pick eligible too. So there could be even more on their plate. So you're talking about double-digit draft picks, more time passing with, more cap opening up. It is a retooling roster that could be competitive. I do not think it is the finished product. I think there is still a lot more they can do to be a Super Bowl competitor, as you said, and we're just going to have to see it. And if it comes into fruition that this year is still a very competitive year, I will be perfectly fine with it. If it's a Super Bowl year, I think I'd be even more fine with that, John.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm gonna wrap it up there with Techno saying Joe in all caps. I appreciate the all caps mentioning of my name. I appreciate the hype and you watching. And just one final comment. I'm fine with White, but Winston, Huntley are the quarterbacks I want to back up Allen. I actually love both of those options as backups. I don't think, it's a set in stone thing for Mike White. They just said it was a visit. So maybe he left. Maybe nothing got agreed to. I don't know. But we'll have to see. I'm cool with those options too. John, I appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. Again, I messaged you about a week ago. I'm really glad we were able to get you back on the show. Tell the good people what you got going on. What's going on over in the world of A to Z Sports?
Yeah, it's been a blast. I just joined up with them a few months ago, and it's been a great time. Get to just dive completely into Bills Mafia, and I also cover the Oregon Ducks. These are two of my favorite fan bases. So getting to spend time in my two favorite football teams is a blast. So follow me over there. I write a ton every day of the week. I got articles going out. There's going to be short form video that's coming out here shortly. There's all kinds of fun happening over at A to Z Sports. Give me a follow on X at John Helmkamp to see what's up.
What a way for the show to end. Just as we were talking about it, Schefter reports Buffalo Bills practice squad. They are signing Mike White. Mike White is a Buffalo Bill. He will be the practice squad QB with room to be promoted. So that has happened. Right. So what a way to end the show. And now you guys are all excited about a backup quarterback. Don't go anywhere, because right after the show, in literally 5-ish minutes, Anthony Prohaska will be live on Disguise coverage, and he just got the breaking news to report to you as well. So check out that show. Don't close out your YouTube. But thank you again, John, for being here. I appreciate it. Please check out his work if you haven't already, and follow him on Twitter/X. For me, my name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter/X at @show_DeRosa. I appreciate each and every single one of you for being here as always. You guys are awesome. Please feel free to drop a like on this, rate the podcast 5 stars if you are listening to us after the fact. One Pass sign up is in the description below. Sign up now for your chance to win the Keon Coleman jerseys. I will be back next week previewing week 1 of the NFL season, Buffalo Bills versus Arizona Cardinals. It's going to be a good one, figuring out how I want to go about it, but that will be next week's topic, so prepare yourselves accordingly. We had a great turnout tonight. Thank you for being here. Stop by again next Tuesday, but for now, we are out. Have a great night, and as always, go Bills. See you soon, folks.